This episode of the Buffalonian Podcast is brought to you by the Buffalonian division of the CastSource Podcast Network, a podcast network built by Buffalonians for Buffalonians, featuring the shows such as the Goatheads Podcast and the Buffalonian Podcast. We cover Bills, Sabres, and more, with more shows on the way very soon. And the CastSource Podcast Network covers many genres including sports, business, mental health, marketing, and entertainment, featuring the podcast shows such as Sports Bring People Together, Limitless, Saviors of the Metaverse, and The Athletic Mindset. Learn more at castsource.com/podcast. And without further ado, let's get into the Bills, Sabres, hot takes, trivia, and more of the Buffalonian Podcast. All right, let's go.
Hello and welcome to the Buffalonian Podcast. I'm your host tonight, Dominic Loss, as always. First time Joe is missing the pod. I don't know, if we should mark this day in the calendar. A little over a year, the perfect attendance is no longer, so he won't be winning that on the award ceremony for year two. But Mike is currently dealing with a sick dog, and Joe is currently moving into his new place. So it's currently going to be me for a little bit. We'll see if Mike ends up joining us as his dog is going through some sickness. So prayers up for the old doggo. But with that being said, let's jump right into the Bills. The Bills having a rather interesting week, I would say. They have announced the signing of an offensive tackle, Brandon Shell, the ex-Miami Dolphin, who has a lot of experience. Has started over 80 games, started a lot last year. Is mainly a right tackle, can play a little bit of left tackle. I think this signing is kind of what we expected the Bills to do maybe a little bit earlier in free agency, which is kind of address maybe a little bit more of the right tackle position, not leave that as big as a weakness. We know the Bills love competition. It seemed for the longest time until this week that the Bills are kind of okay running it back at that position with Spencer Brown. They obviously re-signed David Quessenberry. So it seemed that they were kind of running it back a little bit when obviously no one was drafted in that area. I would say a need. Most fans would probably say middle linebacker with Tremaine being gone and the weakness that was Spencer Brown last year at right tackle was probably, after what they did in free agency and the draft, were probably the two biggest concerns on the roster. And they really didn't seem like they were going to add any competition to that position. But Brandon Shell, here we go, insert Brandon Shell. He's definitely an interesting player. So he ranked 13th among tackles and run grading for PFF, but his pass blocking is very similar. His efficiency and his grading is very similar to Spencer Brown, which is quite poor. So, I think maybe this is a veteran that can compete with Spencer Brown, maybe push Spencer Brown. I still probably would say Spencer Brown will be as long as he's healthy and he doesn't completely crap his pants, will probably be your week one starter. And I think he has a higher ceiling than Shell. So if Spencer Brown hits what I would assume Brandon Beane thinks he still can, then I would assume that would be a higher ceiling than what Brandon Shell can in this position. But again, it's another body, it's another vet in the room. We saw the Bills really address the interior offensive line this offseason, bringing in a guy like Connor McGovern, with a big I wouldn't say big contract, but with the Bills' salary, with the Bills' cap space, it was a pretty big commitment to bring, selecting Osiris Torrance in the second round, bringing in David Edwards, still having Ryan Bates, bringing back Ike Bacher. So, they definitely made a big commitment to the interior offensive line. I don't know if worrisome is the right word, but it was a little puzzling that they weren't making that commitment to the tackle position. And obviously you have Dion locked up as your franchise left tackle, but it just seemed like right tackle was as big a need as interior offensive line. It seemed, for the most part, the Bills were going to run it back, but they add Brandon Shell. I don't think it makes a huge difference in terms of the position. I don't think it's upgraded a lot. I think there's more maybe if, Spencer Brown's not doing it, you have another option who's capable, to bring someone off the street. I do think Brandon Shell will probably make the roster. But with him and Questenberry, they're both a little redundant. So I believe Prestonberry did play a little bit of guard last year, if I'm not mistaken, at one point or sometime in his career. So maybe that gives him a little bit of an edge. Shell's really played, I believe, 2 or 3 games at left tackle, and the majority of his starts been at right tackle. Where he's a serviceable right tackle. I don't think it's necessarily, for my mind, really great. Like, I don't think it helps me go to sleep at night thinking Brandon Shell's guarding, Josh Allen's right side, but it's another option. It's another, as Brandon Beam would say, competition to really push Spencer Brown to be the best player he could be. So, and it's another veteran that has experience that could also help Spencer Brown. You saw it with Questenberry last year as well. So, it's an interesting move. I expected them to eventually add an offensive tackle. I'm surprised it took them the last week of May to do so, but happy that it seems that they're willing to add to a position still. And speaking of maybe adding to a position, again, the circling, the rumors, the DeAndre Hopkins mill is back with him being officially now released by the Arizona Cardinals. So he's now officially a free agent, can sign wherever he wants. No longer the Bills have to trade for him and get that contract, find a way to reconstruct that contract while also getting the right draft capital. I think it's an interesting situation because I think DeAndre Hopkins can still play. I still think he has elite hands. He's a very good route runner. I know he's in his 30s now. I think that's a little bit concerning for a guy that's never was an elite athlete. So I think that's maybe you get a little concerned that he could be kind of like Dez Bryant a little bit, where Dez Bryant kind of fell off, just like off a cliff. But I think DeAndre Hopkins is in a little bit of a better spot than Dez Bryant was when he got cut by the Cowboys. And I think this is interesting for the Bills. Again, I'm not saying I'm anti DeAndre Hopkins. I never believed the idea of DeAndre Hopkins could really work. I think, especially when they had a trade for him, I just never thought the Bills were going to trade significant draft capital for him. And I just think reconstructing the contract, the Cardinals just didn't want to do, which, listen, from a Cardinals perspective, I'm confused why they didn't just trade him for the best available offer. I mean, they cut him before June 1st so they could take all of his dead cap because they're tanking this year, but I'm confused that they were willing to do that, why they wouldn't at least want to try and get some kind of draft capital out of it. But what can I say? Arizona's a dysfunctional organization, but that doesn't surprise me. But, there's been a lot of reports that it's an arms race between Kansas City and the Bills. And to me, it's interesting that, for me, both teams really don't need DeAndre Hopkins. I think it's a luxury for both teams. I think both teams really, to be honest, just don't want DeAndre Hopkins to go to the other team. I don't think it's that much that we need to add DeAndre. We have a need for DeAndre Hopkins. It's just that we have a need to not let DeAndre Hopkins fall to an interconference rival. Because you saw the Chiefs last year winning Super Bowl as, Kelsey's kind of a weird tight end wide receiver mix, but Juju Smith-Schuster was their wide receiver one last year. And with the Bills, I think they have a lot of trust in Gabe Davis. I think they've really reworked the wide receiver room. And you still have Stephon Diggs there, and adding another weapon, Dalton Kincaid, year 2 of Ken Dorsey is kind of a little bit like, where would the fit would be awesome just for pure talent, but it'd be kind of like, where would DeAndre Hopkins go? Like, how would that affect the target share for the players? Would DeAndre Hopkins kind of be what Gabe Davis was last year, and Gabe Davis would kind of be that complementary piece he was, in 20 and 21 when he had those 600 yards seasons, and then obviously had the big playoff game. But maybe that would open up stuff for Gabe Davis. But I don't think the Bills have a need for DeAndre Hopkins. I think it would be incredibly unfortunate for the Bills if he went to the Chiefs. I think that's a team that obviously you can tell by the arms race that they don't want to get them. The Chiefs have very easy where they could just extend Chris Jones and they could free up $16 million and give him a contract. The Bills could do a little things with Deion's contract and Trey White's contract to free up cap space, but not as much, not as easy as the Chiefs. And we heard all this along about Brandon Beane not really wanting to be all in. And it seems to me that if they would want to get Hopkins, they really had to kind of go all in. And I don't think Brandon Beane's willing to do that. It kind of just matters what DeAndre Hopkins wants. I think fans like myself get caught up in the fact of players want to win and want to chase rings. But I think also when you're DeAndre Hopkins and you still have a little bit of juice left, I think he was on pace for like when Kyler Murray was healthy, like for 1,500 yards still last season. I know he served a 6-game suspension with PDs, and then Murray gets injured, so it was kind of just a wild year for DeAndre Hopkins. But I still think he wants to get paid, and I think especially seeing Odell's contract, how Odell coming off his second ACL, didn't even play last year. The money, that he was able to get from the Ravens. But I think the problem really for DeAndre Hopkins, and he also signed with Clutch Sports Agency to maybe help him with this. But the problem with DeAndre Hopkins, it just seems like the Ravens like really misread the market for OBJ, and they were really bidding against no one to give him that contract. I think they were just trying to make Lamar happy and get to the finish line for Lamar. So they had, alternative motives of just giving Odell this big contract. They wanted to really please Lamar, and that's why they like way overdid the market. So I think DeAndre Hopkins comes into this with the mindset of I'm going to get Odell money. I don't think there's really teams that are willing to offer DeAndre Hopkins Odell money, especially teams that he would probably want to go to, like the Chiefs or the Bills. Do the Lions make sense? I don't know. The Lions would be cool, I'm not gonna lie. Especially if Jameson Williams, their first round pick last year, getting a suspension for gambling for 6 games. I think that would probably be the spot where I think Hopkins can succeed the most with, really good offensive coordinator, Jared Goff, kind of good in that system, good weapons for Detroit, weaker division so they could make the playoffs, get his money, probably put up some numbers, win some games. Like, I think Detroit's probably the best landing spot for D-Hop for probably what he wants, which is cash and success. But if he just wants to go straight for the ring, like I think it's the Bills or the Chiefs. And as a Bills fan, I'm really torn on D-Hop. I've always been really torn on D-Hop because I like the player. The fit is kind of, with all these juggling pieces of how's the Kincaid piece going to fit into the offense now? How are they going to get Knox more involved? How are they going to make Davis more effective in the wide receiver division? How are they going to help this ground game get up, improve upon from the second half of success? How is Diggs not going to, get back to really being first half of the season Diggs? I think there's a lot of questions really for the efficiency of this Bills offense. And I don't know if adding DeAndre Hopkins, does it add more questions or does it help you answer more questions? I think that's like kind of where I'm, right in the middle, where I think he could add, obviously he's a great talent, but does he add additional problems that now, make it hard for you to find solutions? I don't know. So I think it's interesting. I think there was a contract from one of the Cover One guys that they could do like a 3-year deal that's like heavily incentivized. So it was cap hits really low this year and all that. It would be interesting. I think for me, from Bills, from my perspective, I would need some commitment, to be honest. I wouldn't be comfortable really with a 1-year deal, especially if Gabe Davis, being a free agent. But then does that shut the door for Gabe Davis? I think, Brand Bean, big fan of Gabe Davis. Like, I think if you bring in D-Hop, I think you got to go more than 1 year to like not have both him and Davis free agents at the same time. Like, you want to get a little bit of, wide receivers, but then, past the season, you're going in with Diggs, who's going to be 30, D-Hop's 31, 32. Like, you're going to go in with a multi-year contracts with 2 guys in their low 30s from a wide receiver position that the time and time again where guys just kind of fall off. And so I would be a little bit concerned with that. That's why I'm not fully on the D-Hop train. I would just say this. I just don't want him to go to Kansas City. Like, if he goes to Kansas City, I'm going to be mad. That's the one outcome I'm going to be mad at. The Bills want to be like, okay, this is like, obviously I'm going to be enjoyable. I think all of us are going to be like, whoa, this is pretty sick. But I think maybe a week or two after like that initial high is going to be like, okay, how are you going to play him? And if he goes to the Lions, I'm like, oh, yeah, cool story. But like the one option that I don't think the Bills can afford D-Hop to go to the Chiefs. So how will you stop D-Hop from going to the Chiefs? This is where this arms race of, freeing up cap space potentially, getting him an extended deal. Like that's where I think this is going to get really interesting. If it becomes really a 2-man race between the Chiefs and the Bills, I find it hard for the Bills to eventually go out and win unless they really like go all in, which I think they want to avoid doing. So I think that would be my concern for being a Bills fan. But that is the DeAndre Hopkins talk. I will assume that. See, next week for the pod, I think we're going to be. I don't think he's going to be signed anywhere. I think this is going to be. This is going to go a little bit into June. I think. I don't think this is a situation that's going to resolve very quickly. I think this is a very unique situation. The organizations and D Hop kind of coming off a weird year. It's interesting. So before I transition to talking about the Athletic AFC East roundtable, so there has been a rumor that Josh Allen is the Madden 2024 cover. I think this is awesome if it's potentially true. I don't want to go fully deep into it because it's a rumor. It's not fully, it's not fully reported that it's going to be there. I believe I read in an article that EA is announcing it between June 8th and June 10th, so we're going to get an answer in a week or two. But I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Josh is one of the best quarterbacks in the entire NFL, one of the best players in the NFL, very likable. All he does for us is in the hospital. He's a superstar now. It seems like he's like everywhere. I mean, he was at Oak Hill. I know it was in Rochester, but you saw him, just last year with Patrick Mahomes in the match with Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady. So you see, I think this. You also consistently see him in the top of the top extra, top 10, top 5 of the league in jersey sales. So this is a guy that's not just a great player for the Bills, but he's also a great ambassador for the sport of football, for the NFL. I just hope the game doesn't suck because the game has been bad for a while. I believe this is also kind of rumorish, but with Madden, I wish Mike was here, but I think this is really the last year for Madden, or they're going to have major changes apparently. So hopefully, I will say this: I haven't bought Madden in like 5-6 years, but again, if Josh is on the cover, I will be buying Madden. I will be buying like the cover, not just online. So, I think maybe that's another part of it from Madden's perspective of all the Bills Mafia fans that would be willing to buy the game just because Josh is on the cover, instead of having Patrick Mahomes on the cover for like the third time. I think. Last year I really thought Josh was going to be on the cover, but obviously with the passing of John Madden, it was only right that he was on the cover. So I think it delayed it a year, but I think we may have arrived. I don't want to rush into things because we still had to wait probably a week-ish, maybe 10 to 10 days to officially announce it. And I'm sure if Joe and Mike get back on the pod, we'll have a great discussion about that and the curse. But I believe the curse has been lifted, if I'm not mistaken, because Mahomes had a very good 22 season. I don't think he didn't win, I believe, when he was on the cover of 22, because I think that was the year they lost to the Bengals. But nevertheless, he had a good season. So I think that ended the man curse. I don't think we're going to be concerned about that anymore. But going into the Athletic AFC East roundtable, so this was an interesting article where they kind of talked to writers from teams in this roundtable format, and they had a couple answers to some questions that I thought were interesting. All of them had Josh as the best quarterback in the division, which I think is accurate. A couple of them were I wouldn't say nervous isn't the right word, but like concerned to not slight Rodgers by saying Allen just easily. It's not that you gotta respect Aaron Rodgers, 4-time MVP, but he is 40. I still think he's a little underrated because I still think he has it. Where I think if with this team around him and the Jets, I think he's dangerous. I also think Tua, if he's healthy, is going to have a good year. And Mac with Bill O'Brien, we'll see how that leads. I mean, Mac's just in a bad position, the skill position players, but I think they all come to the right conclusion of the unanimous decision that Josh is the best quarterback in the division. I mean, again, I think we talked about this last year. Like you could make last week, excuse me, but you can make an argument very easily that Josh is the second best quarterback in the league. And I think you could also make an argument, honestly, that Josh is the second best player in the league. Because especially if Aaron Donald having a down year, I mean, Michael Parsons is up there, Trent Williams for an offensive tackle, Travis Kelce for a tight end. But I think with the importance of quarterback, you could really make a case that Josh is the second best player in the league and only behind Patrick Mahomes. So it's only right that I think in this roundtable, they went to the right discussion that Josh is the best quarterback in the division for now, I guess. They also, when predicting the division, the standings, all of them had the Pats in last, and all of them had the Bills winning, and then they kind of each had, the Jets and the Dolphins 2-3 in some kind of fashion. I think this is interesting because I think the Pats are getting a little overlooked. I'm not saying the Pats are going to win the division. The AFC East is just straight loaded. I think this is the best division in football. They had a roundtable question. Some of them had the AFC East, some had the AFC North. I completely disagree with the AFC North being the best division in football because, yes, I think you had the firepower on the Rangers. God, mixed Rangers. The Ravens and Bengals. I believe the Steelers and the Browns are kind of, Browns have a lot of talent, but, inconsistent. The Steelers, kind of the opposite, maybe a little bit of void talent, but have great coaching and great organization. I think those two teams are kind of on par with like the Pats. So, and I think the Jets and Dolphins are better than those teams. So that's why I would say the AFC East is the best division in football. But I do think the Pats, well, I don't think they could win the division. I probably would still pick them to be last. I still think they have like the potential to beat out either the Jets or Dolphins, especially if O'Brien can get something out of Mac in this offense. Because last season, according to DVOA, down the stretch, the Pats had the best defense in the league, and they added Christian Gonzalez, who many had potentially to be the top corner in the draft, maybe second best behind Witherspoon, who went to the Seahawks. So I think, the Pats are a team that's a little sneaky in my mind, just a little sneaky. But the Bills have kind of had their number the last couple of years, other than that windstorm. So I don't think the Bills had to be too concerned. So that was kind of the interesting roundtable. And then I have two kind of, not questions, but I was going to have questions with Mike, but he is not here with the sick doggo. So I guess I'll ask them to myself and I'll answer them. So the position I am looking most forward to in training camp, because we see it now in OTAs, is I'm looking most forward to this middle linebacker position. There are just so many guys that I just don't know who will be in the clubhouse leader. Terrell Bernard apparently had a very good 11-on-11 day. Dorian Williams is learning the middle linebacker position. Oh, there's a clip of Spector, Bernard, I believe, or maybe it was Dobson, and then Williams going in like a sled drill, and Williams messed up because his hips weren't moving forward. I'm not going to get that technical sound because I'm going to leave that to the coaches, but I think that's the position that I think everyone should have their eyes on. Right tackle to me is still the biggest, I'm concerned most about that position because I think that's like a position that could really kill the Bills, because we saw it last year of Josh injuring his UCL, or Josh injury away from not being a playoff team. It's just as simple as that sometimes. And that I mean, anything on the offensive line is scary, but to me, the middle linebacker position, how McDermott is going to be able to kind of fill that void of Tremaine with maybe a little more undersized, maybe a little bit more 3 safety looks. Who gets to start week 1? I don't know. I don't know what the odds are. I would say the clubhouse leader is probably Tyrell Dodson, just because he started last year in place of Tremaine, but I think he really struggled, and I think if Terrell Bernard really comes in and has a really good camp, I think he might be, up there. I think Spector is a little bit more dark horsey, and I think Dorian Williams is kind of on the outside looking in. I would be shocked if he's a week 1 starter. So I think the Spector, and then actually you can't forget about AJ Klein too. So I mean, there's just so many guys, but there's not really many solutions. If that, there's a problem, there's a hole, and you have a lot of pieces to fill the hole, but neither one of those pieces are exact, fit in the hole exactly. You have to put some elbow grease in it, to exactly, put it in, and it's a little tight and it keeps popping back in and out. So I think the hole will always be there throughout the year. It's just how good can the defense around them be to kind of patch that. McDermott with his play calling, I think, will be interesting. And then finally, before we go into our, the Sabres talk, I think the most underrated position, Pedal, that most of us are overlooking is corner. I think corner is a position that we haven't talked a lot about. Rightfully so, because, I mean, you have Trey coming back, year 2 off the ACL. It's kind of like the year people are, athletes bounce back to their form. And you had the first round pick at Elam, you have Christian Benford, you have Dane Jackson, and I don't think there's a lot of discussion about this cornerback too. I think, I just talked about the middle linebacker and the right tackle. There's not a lot of discussions about who's going to be that second outside cornerback opposite Tre'Davious White. And what I'd like to say, yeah, Kyrie Irving had a really good postseason. It was big time in the Dolphins game. Was pretty solid against the Bengals. I really haven't really watched that game after the first watch, I'm gonna be honest. But I think it's interesting that Dane Jackson's still here. Christian Benford got the week 1 start last year. We know what Christian Benford is. He can tackle very well, and Sean McDermott loves tackling cornerbacks, and Kyrie Irving was a little inconsistent last year at that. And that was the big knock on him coming out of the University of Florida last year in the first round. So I think it will be interesting to see how that position goes. I would say right now the betting favorite, again, would probably be Kyrie Irving because of the way he ended last year, but it just wouldn't. I mean, they started a 6-round rookie last year in Benford, so it wouldn't shock me if he got it or somehow Dane, works his way. Listen, the Bills have fantastic corner depth this year, and I think that's really great. But again, it's kind of like you have great depth, but I really would like to find us a permanent solution to the second cornerback spot, where I don't have to keep rotating in, all those years of Dane. Was it? No, Levi Wallace one series, Josh Norman one series in 2020. We saw it, with Dane, Kyrie, and Christian Benford last year. I would just like to solidify that spot, and I think that's a position battle that it's one of the few really starting spots that I think is complete up for grabs with middle linebacker and potentially the interior offensive line and right tackle. Like, I think that is the most where there's legit 3 NFL starters that are all solid, and it's just going to matter who's more consistent in training camp, who's more consistent in the preseason, and I'm very intrigued to see how that goes. So with that being said, it is time to transition to our Sabres talk. Well, have we been doing this, the last couple of shows is that we've really started, instead of being a Sabres talk, really more of an Amerks talk. And that is what we are going to do, as the Amerks, as I am recording this, just won Game 5 in Hershey by a score of 4-1. So a really solid bounce back performance from the Amerks. Last week, as we talked, they won Game 1. We're up 1-0. They lose the second game in Hershey. It's kind of whatever. You get the split. You get to Rochester, the sold-out arena, back-to-back. And they just lay a goose egg they just lay an egg in Game 3. And then Game 4, they're up 2-0. And this is why I talk about the most dangerous lead in hockey is a 2-goal lead. As they kind of sat back, the Amerks kind of let Hershey really dictate the play, and all of a sudden it's 2-1. It's like, oh my gosh, one puck, hit the wrong way and it's tied, and then they do a cross ice pass and it's 2-2. And next thing you know, there's a scrum in front of the net, and Hershey has taken a 3-2 lead. It's kind of, I guess poetic. I don't know, like karma. You can't do it. You just can't do it. And they give up an empty netter and lose. And it seemed like it was kind of over, to be honest, because you lose both your games at home was just a complete momentum killer. You're down 3-1, but this team, you gotta credit the organization as a whole, the coaching staff for getting them ready, but also the players for their mental toughness. It would have been very easy for them to come into Hershey and just kind of be like, all right, like, down 3-1. It's a physical team. We're just kind of getting pounded. We just absolutely threw up on ourselves at home in 2 games and blew a lead. It would have been very easy for them to give up and just kind of let Hershey dominate the game. And, right in the first period, Yuri Kulik scores to give the Amerks the early lead. Malcolm Subban was really solid. And then in the third period, Lucas Ruzak and, the captain score. They did give a power play goal in between, so it was a 2-1 game for a long time, but a really quality road win for the Amerks to now stay alive another night. They will return this Friday in Rochester. Hopefully they don't go lose all 3 of their home games. Hopefully we could force a Game 7. But you saw us at Syracuse; they were down 2-0 when they ended up winning the last 3 games. They had series to come back. This is a team that has shown time and time again, that mental toughness that you need to bounce back from a really poor performance and to have your backs against the wall against a Hershey team that's very, veteran laden. They knew the stakes. They didn't want to go back to Rochester. They wanted to end it, at home in front of their home fans. And for the Amherst to kind of come in and immediately throw a punch and kind of stay on their toes, take the beating from Hershey the next couple periods, and able to add to the lead and kind of a little bit coast from there. It's a big result. Now, I do have to say this, and I think this is an important thing to discuss. So Matthew Savoy, the Sabres, I don't want to say top prospect, but one of their top prospects, who was playing with the WHL in Winnipeg. His season ends and he signs with the AHL. We talked about this last week. And he had his AHL debut in Game 2 and played in Game 2 and Game 3. And I'm not going to say he played fantastic. I think I can't remember who, but someone charting on Twitter talked about how he was ahead in high danger chances. So really he wasn't as bad, even though he had a -1, no points and no shots on goal. He was solid. Is this the great series for him? No, because, him being under 5'10", a little small, but I think they could use the speed. And the problem I have, and this is where I get very annoyed with Amherst fans. And I'm not saying I'm not an Amherst fan. I enjoy the Amherst. I root for the Amherst. I wouldn't consider myself to be a fan. I think that's, a little, it's kind of like with the Bisons being here in Buffalo. I'm not a Blue Jays fan. Like, I'll root for the Blue Jays a little bit because of the Bisons, but I'm not a Blue Jays fan. I'm a Bisons fan. It's the same thing here. Like, I root for the Amherst. I wouldn't consider myself to be a fan. And I think the problem that the Amherst fans have always had is you are, at the end of the day, the Amherst are a farm team that is supposed to help the Sabres organization, right? And the Sabres organization are going to pull what they want from the Amherst. And that doesn't mean that, when an injury happens in the Sabres, they're not going to be like, oh, the Amherst, you guys need these top guys. We'll take no, they're going to take your best players. That's just how it goes. That's how it goes in minor leagues. You're going to take your best players. And if the Sabres thought, hey, the best thing for Matt Savoy's development is to get in a couple of games here and see where he's at in the AHL level, they're going to do it. And to complain about that and say the reason they lost those 2 games is because Matt Savoy came in and ruined the chemistry is complete bukkake. I think that is undeniably stupid. I'm sorry. Like, you can't honestly tell me that the reason they lost those 2 games was Matt Savoy. They didn't play well. And honest to God, it's not even they didn't play well. They actually got goalied. Like, they actually did play pretty well. They had more chances than Hershey. They actually outplayed Hershey in Game 2 and 3. They got dominated in Game 4 without Savoy. So it wasn't really they played all that bad. They just got goalied by Hunter Shepard, who's a solid AHL goaltender. And the Amherst fans just want to go for this 19-year-old's head. Okay? Like, if that makes you feel any better, I don't know what to tell you. Like, the Sabres, again, are going to do what they feel is best for their organization. If they felt for their organization the best thing for Matt Savoy was to play a couple of games in the AHL playoffs, they are going to do that. And the fact that they lost those games sucks. But at the end of the day, the Sabres care more about their players developing and being ready for the NHL level than the Amherst winning. I'm sorry, that's always going to be the case. The pro league, the mother league, I don't know, is always going to care more about the development of players and the success of the minor league teams. That's just how it goes. And Amherst fans get very annoyed by that, but that's your place in being a minor league system, is that you're going to get, the short end of the stick sometimes. And it's not like Savoy played all that bad. It's not like the team played all that bad. So to blame Matt Savoy for the fact they lost Game 2 and Game 3 is really ridiculous. And it only made sense that his replacement, Cedarquist, came in and had 2 assists in Game 4. And was one of their better players. But I will say this, Philip Cedarquist is good. Like, he should not have been scratched for Matt Savoy. There are other players, I believe, that are not as good on the Amherst. So I find that I find that's my sidebar by myself rant is that the hate that Matt Savoy was getting is completely unwarranted. And I find it a little ridiculous. But nevertheless, that will conclude our Amerks. Well, I shouldn't say that because obviously the Amerks play Game 6 Friday. And I shouldn't say that completely concludes our Amerks talk because there's another addition to the Amerks by way of Ryan Johnson. He finally signs. It only took him 2 months-ish where he could have been playing in the AHL playoffs, but we'll see what kind of game shape he's in. I don't think he's going to get into the series. If the Amerks advance, I think he's going to. I would be shocked if he doesn't play if the Amerks advance. It's going to be the same situation as Matt Savoy and Amerks fans. I mean, if they lose, it's going to take this kid's head off. But he's a very good puck mover, very sound defensively. Maybe not put up a bunch of points, but this is a huge signing for the Sabres. Obviously, if they would have lost him, they would have got a second round pick for being a first round pick and not setting up his team. But to sign him, I think is huge because the Sabres to me have solid, defensive prospects. They don't have any more elite defensive prospects. But when you have Power, Dahlin, Samuelson, even Yoki Haru who's still young up there, I think there's a way to find a vet or two that fits in your top six, like Lyubushkin, and having another guy like Ryan Johnson, who I think has the profile of being a very solid number 5, maybe a number 4 defenseman on a very good team. I think that's a huge signing. And again, we'll see how he goes. He's only been practicing for now. So we don't fully know what he looks like in professional hockey, obviously playing in college in the University of Minnesota. But he signed a 2-year deal. So this is kind of similar to, I guess that was maybe the fuss. I don't know. In 2 years, we'll see where he's at with his ELC, and we'll see what kind of contract he gets. But I think this is a guy that will start. I think he'll have an opportunity to win a spot next year in training camp. But I think most likely he'll start in Rochester and kind of rebuild that Rochester decor. Because, again, I feel like every year the Rochester decor is just a bunch of free agents that have to be either brought back or retooled again. But I think he'll start in Rochester, and maybe I think he'll get a couple games the next year in the NHL level. And if he plays well enough, I think it could be a Samuelson situation where 2 years ago Samuelson started in the AHL mostly because of injury, but started in the AHL, got called up, and then played so well that they didn't really send him back down. So I think that could be a potential situation here with Ryan Johnson. So with that being said, that will conclude the Amerks talk of our Sabres talk of the pod. Talking a little player grades. So third line, it's a little difficult. Obviously, the kids line and the top line are very easy, 3 people to kind of come up with. But for this, I came up with really mostly people that I would associate with the third line of Jordan Greenway, Casey Middlestat, and Victor Olsen. And I think this is interesting. 3 players, because I don't think all 3 players had great years. I don't think all of them had a complete from the start to finish kind of years that they would want. But we'll start with the new guy, Jordan Greenway. For me, I'm gonna cheat out here. I'm gonna pull a little bit of a cheese move and say incomplete. I don't have a grade for Jordan Greenway. I think it's hard to grade a guy that obviously had a really rough year in Minnesota, was not doing well, came to Buffalo, really struggled for the first part of his stint, got banged up or kind of banged up but scratched a little bit to kind of learn the system, and then you saw him take off. You saw him take off in a little bit in the last push of the season. And I think that will be interesting to see. Obviously, he was playing with Tage Thompson and Dylan Cousins, but you can kind of see a little bit of the potential of a guy, sound defensively, can kind of win puck battles, big body, physical, kind of a playoff guy maybe that could be tough against on the forecheck. So I'm interested to see what he does in a full 82 games, but I can't give him – I just can't with a good heart give him a grade because I think it's going – if I would give him a good grade, it would be a bad grade. I don't think it's 100% fair to the player because I don't think we've seen enough of the player while he understood the system. I think it's hard for that. But my second player is Victor Olofsson, and I'm giving this man. I'm going to give him a D+. Listen, he had 28 goals. Olofsson kind of did what he did with that, but just another one-way season from Victor Olofsson. Had 40 points. Offensively, with the goal scoring wasn't a bad season, but again, just horrific defensively, just soft. I think that's the key word for Victor Olofsson for me. Is just really soft. Avoids contact, doesn't seem to always want to fight for the puck, doesn't always seem engaged. And it's hard to know really what the Bills do from here. I don't fully know the Bills. Geez, oh my God. The Sabres, excuse me. I don't fully know what the Sabres do. I think a trade has to happen, but again, I don't know who really wants him. I think they might have to retain salary. It's a tough moment, and I don't fully know what they would get in return. Maybe just kind of a cap dump him. I just don't think you can have Victor Olofsson back on your roster next season. And D+ to me is the correct grade. Not the best season for Olofsson. This is where I was a component of last year trading him because at the end of the year, because he ended very hot. And I thought his value was an all-time high. I didn't think he was going to be able to live up to that. And then he signed the 2-year, $4.75 million contract. And listen, they're not in really big cap constraints next year, so it's really not a huge deal that they have him signed to that. But I do think they need to move off Victor Olofsson. So the last player, Casey Middlestat, what a turnaround. 15 goals, 44 assists for 59 points. Played all 82. I believe he was the only Sabre to play all 82 games. Just a tremendous turnaround from the first half of the year to the second half of the year. And I think we're going to get a lot of heavy discussion into what to do with Middlestat. There was an Athletic fan survey where over 1,000 fans answered questions, and only about 24% said they would want to trade Middlestat. Honest to God, I'm kind of not in that 24%. I think keeping Casey Middlestat is the best thing for this team because what are you going to get? If you would tell me right now Casey Middlestat could be involved in a trade for legit, young, top four right shot defenseman that has a good contract, I would do that in a heartbeat, right? Young goalie, I guess, too, kind of in that mode. I don't know. I feel like if those two aren't if young goalie or young right shot defenseman isn't being offered in the package of Middlestat, I'm kind of not interested in just dumping him because I think what Middlestat does is he adds a lot of versatility. I can't believe I'm saying this, but he adds a lot of versatility where he played wing and then he played center with Thompson being banged up. So I think when those injuries hit, I still think he's a third line player. I don't think that particularly has changed. My opinion of that has changed, but I think he's more of a guy that can play third line, but can potentially play up in your lineup if injuries happen, which we all know they're going to happen. And I just don't think he's a guy that I don't think you could lose a 59-point scorer. I think his offense would, as much as I'm saying I'll get rid of Victor Olofsson, the fact is Victor Olofsson did score 28 goals and had 40 points last year. Getting rid of Middlestat and Olofsson, you're getting rid of nearly 40 plus goals and nearly 100 points of offense. And then who are you relying on to take that? Payne Krabs, Jack Quinn, JJ Perk. I think we all expect them to take jumps, but and then maybe you think Yuri Kulik will be in the lineup. I think that's a little bit of a gamble that I just don't think this. I think the Olsen move, yes. I don't think that's really that much of a gamble. I think you could place him. I think replacing Middlestat as a gamble to the forward group that the Sabres do not need to make. So with that being said, that is I'm defending Casey Middlestat, and I'm going to give a grade here. I'm going to give him a B. I'm sorry. No, I'm going to give him a B. And while I think that might seem a little confusing after I praised him, his second half was amazing, but his first half was terrible. I think, again, I'm one of those guys that I think your whole body of work matters to me in these season grades. I'm not really I try to avoid being incredibly recency bias, and for me, he had a D first half and a first half. And for me, I think it works out a little bit more where I favor, playing hard down the stretch in a more advanced role and how much he's improved. So I'll give him the B, a little bit higher than the average between, an A and a D. But to me, he improved a lot throughout the year. I'm intrigued to see, has he gotten over that kind of mental hurdle. And he's a guy that, all of a sudden, for the longest time, soft, didn't play hard. Kind of a little bit of Middlestat. Was kind of a guy that avoided contact. Every time he went to the boards, like, man, he's losing this puck. I think this year he finally realized, the second half of the series, like, I have a good shot. I am not a good NHL skater. While I don't have the physical tools, I can work. If I work harder and win more puck battles, I'll be successful. And we saw it. He's still a good playmaker. He still makes insane passes. And he's hopefully he uses his shot a little bit more. He could get up 20 goals. I think we saw at Middlestat him learning that, hey, if I own the boards like Sam Reinhart did here, I can have a very good NHL career here in Buffalo. So I think that's, I'm intrigued to see what Middlestat does in the 23-24 season. But talking a little bit more about the survey, 97% of fans believe the team will make the playoffs next year. I think the Sabres fans are very optimistic. I would agree. I think if the players that we all expect to take proper jumps and they add, the holes in the roster, goalie and a little bit defense, and we'll see maybe if they add a forward. I think they should be a playoff team. I think the expectation should be playoffs. I think that should be what's marketed as success. There is another question of what would be successful next season. I think 61% was playoffs, and like 37% was winning around. I don't think they need to win around next year. I wouldn't consider that to be obviously that's a success if they win around, but I don't think I need to say them, oh wow, that was successful because they won around. If they lost in the first round, I'd be like, wow, that was a successful season. No, like to make the playoffs, to break the drought, I think would be considered a successful season. And I had the expectation that they will do that. And then 56% of fans want Zemgus Girgensons gone. A little bit of a, be careful what you wish for. Girgensons, known commodity, defensive forward, his role. With that being said, I am one of the 56% fans that agree. I agree with the majority of fans on this. I think especially if Oposo going back, I think I would just like to be a little bit younger, maybe a little bit better offensively in that Girgensons role. Still find a guy that can get you the same kind of defensive impacts, but if I can improve just a little bit more skill. I know Girgensons had 12 goals. The last couple of years he's had double-digit goal seasons, but some of them have been kind of fluky. I need a guy that's a little bit better, a little bit more two-way, not just one way, but defense. It's a little bit weird to say. Usually when you say one way, you think of forwards, but one way defender in Girgensons. I need a little bit more two-way. But moving on from the fan survey, unfortunately, we are getting a Jack versus Sam final. My $5 bet is still good with Mike. That is very exciting. With that being said, I'm rooting hard for Sam Reinhart. I am. I like Sam Reinhart. I know the Panthers are kind of a division rival. I just don't see them as really like a rival. I don't know. It's bizarre to say that, but I just kind of like they're not Montreal, they're not Boston, they're not Toronto to me. But I like some of the guys in Florida. I just don't like Vegas as an organization at all. It's not even just Jack Eichel. I think the way they do business is terrible. How they just kind of get rid of their players, and especially Fleury and Pacioretty. I don't really respect that, and especially because I believe that they're like $11 million over the cap, but because they did all that LTIR stuff, that they're just like fielding a team. I'm not saying the Panthers probably aren't doing the same, but like I just find that to be absolutely ridiculous in hockey that you're facing a team that's has $11 million more than you. I don't know. I just think that's dumb. But listen, Sam, I don't think has an opportunity. Jack Eichel has a legit opportunity to win the Conn Smythe. So the leading point getter right now is Rupe Hintz from the Stars, who just got eliminated with 24. Kachuk, I believe, is 21, and then the leading for Vegas is Eichel of 18. So there's a real opportunity that if Jack plays well, I don't think they're going to give it to Aiden Hill, the goaltender. There's a real opportunity that if Jack plays well in the series and Vegas wins, he's going to win the Conn Smythe, which would be tough. Seeing O'Reilly already had one, but I'm surprisingly at ease with this. I think this would really make me mad if they got bad returns, but Sam, they get Devin Levi, who's at least going to be the goaltender of the future, and Yuri Kulik with the first round pick seems to be a really good player. I love Alex Tuch. I love what he does on this roster. I love that he's on this team. I like paying Krebs in my bottom 6. I like what the potential Noah Austin can be. So it would be different if they trade. It'd be different, with O'Reilly at the time. It was a lot of like, oh my God, like we get this crap return. He's going to win the Conn Smythe and the Stanley Cup literally a year later. I think that was a lot of bitterness. I'm not all that bitter about this. Vegas is a good team. I kind of expected them to kind of be competing with Jack, and the Panthers got on a good run. So my cup prediction, while I'm rooting heavily for the Panthers, I do think Vegas is going to win in 6. I think Jack Eichel is going to win the Conn Smythe. That would be my prediction if I had a bet. Well, I should say I've bet money on it because I literally have a $5 bet on the Panthers, but I did that a year and a half ago because I thought the Panthers were going to win this cup last year, and they got swept in the second round by Tampa. So, yeah. So, I guess go Panthers. I think this is kind of a series where you just kind of sit back and don't root for either team, but I just my disdain for the Knights, I think, is going to push me to root pretty heavily for the Panthers by the end of it. But that's going to do it for this Sabres talk. We are going to transition to the a brief Bandits talk, the Would You Rather, the Past Your Prime Hall of Fame, and the trivia right after this. We are back here with the Buffalonian podcast. Obviously, we transitioned from our Sabres talk now to our game part with our Would You Rather, our Past Your Prime Hall of Fame, our trivia. And look who we have here. Mooch. Introduce yourself, sir.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mooch. Long-time listener, first time on the pod. Dom is my boy. So good. Happy to be here, Dom. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, I needed a wingman for this segment. I thought, who's better expertise to pick on but yourself? So before we get into our fun part, I do have to briefly say I just made my Stanley Cup pick of Vegas in 6. I just want to briefly ask, what is your Stanley Cup prediction?
All right. So
and you got to give me the Conn Smythe.
All right. So before the playoffs started, my Stanley Cup final was, and I have the screenshot to prove it, it was Carolina Vegas. So I'm happy that I got the Western Conference correct. With that, I feel like I have to ride with Vegas because they at least showed up on that side of the bracket. So I'm gonna say Vegas in 5. I think it's gonna be a pretty boring, maybe Florida steals game 4 or 3 at home. But I think the Golden Knights get it done. And much to the pain of us Buffalonians, I think we see Jack Eichel raise the cup. However, he will not be the Conn Smythe winner, as that's going to go to William Karlsson. So book it in there. Knights in 5. William Karlsson will be raising the Conn Smythe.
Dang, that's I thought you were going to say Jonathan Marchessault.
I think that's a good take as well. But I think Karlsson's been the fire that they've had to get through this run so far, and I really think he's going to be the guy that carries them all the way if they make it. So
yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting seeing that their goaltender Aiden Hill probably won't win it, so it seems like it's pretty wide open for whoever is the best skater performance. Either different from the Panthers, it seems like Bob, but Tkachuk could probably be. It seems like a 2-man race.
Yeah, I mean, if Bob can steal them the cup, you got to give it to him. But you look at the stats from that Carolina series and Matt Tkachuk, 3 game-winning goals. I mean, the third one wasn't technically an OT goal, but it essentially iced it. And he had an assist on the game-winning goal in the third game. So he had a point on every single goal, 3 of the goals themselves that won them games. So really, that's a tough one. But it doesn't matter to me because it's not going to go to that team since they're not going to win it. So
no, well, then I had to give Mike $5, but that's okay. So transitioning now, before I even get into the Would You Rather, I completely forgot I had this on the outline, but brief Bandits talk. The Bandits again are now in game 3. Mooch and I did go to game 1. That was a pretty nerve-wracking dub. They won by a singular goal. Not really the best performance. Kind of was felt like one of those games. I don't know if you felt, but like if the game was 5 minutes longer, the Bandits probably lose. I don't think they scored after midway through the fourth quarter. It just didn't seem like. I just felt like if the game would have continued 5 more minutes, the Bandits probably lose, and then they got actually throttled by Colorado in game 2. Shocker. So,
yeah, I
don't know.
That's the best way to put it is deja vu, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you recall, Dom, we were at game 1 of the NLL finals last year, and they were playing the Colorado Mammoth, And that game was a nail biter too. I don't remember the final score, but I do want to say
I
that
think they won by a goal.
I want to say they might have. I don't want to state that, but it was a nail biter, and they were in it the whole way. And I remember walking out of there like, "Oh, cool! They're up a game. All they got to do is take care of it." I don't remember who they interviewed, but the guy was like, "I love you, Banditland, but that's the last time we're playing here this year. We're gonna go win it in Colorado." And they did, in fact, not win in Colorado, and they went back to Banditland and lost. But it is deja vu, right? And you're right with if that game had gone a little longer, I really think the momentum was Colorado's way. So you hope that they can deal with the loss of Josh Byrne and they can get it done in Banditland. So,
yeah, not having Josh Byrne, I'm not going to say I'm the resident lacrosse expert. I'm definitely not, but not having Josh Byrne seems to be, when especially in this time of year, especially when you're competing at the highest level for a championship, when you lose one of your better players, it then falls upon really your depth players to play more like stars. And I think we're seeing like Ian McKay. Yeah, not going to pretend I'm a lacrosse expert, but he's a transition player. And now you're seeing him now play that right wing left shot position with Kuche. And Kuche is more of a, kind of like your third option, kind of your pacemaker. Now he's going to he has to step up more. I think he only has 1 goal in 2 games. So
yeah.
Aboard though, Tehoka Nanakote, our guy, had a big game both games.
Yeah, well, people have to, if you're a stat guy, Byrne was tied on the team for most points with Daner, but the two of them had the most points in the entire NLL playoffs. So you're telling me, the number 2 tied for number 1 guy in the entire playoffs is out for the most important 3-game series of the entire season. That's heartbreaking. And I think there's a benefit that people aren't looking at in the chemistry of it, where you're not passing to the same guys. You said it right about McKay. Normally that's Byrne's spot. So you're not passing to him. You know how he passes to you, but that's not him. So, you really hope that a crowd at Banditland in Game 3 can really bring it home for them. And I'd love to see a championship here in Buffalo.
Yeah, it's been 15 years since they won, which is kind of remarkable by the amount of finals they've been to. But they did they lost 10-8 last year in Game 3 in Banditland. So hopeful. I believe that game is Saturday, if I am not mistaken.
I think you'd be correct. I believe it's the 3rd.
So, yeah, Saturday is the 3rd. So, hopeful for a good game there. So, the real reason why I called you, and not for your Stanley Cup takes or your opinion on the Bandits, is I needed a partner for the Would You Rather past or Prime Hall of Fame and trivia. So, the Would You Rather. So, I think we saw this. I guess we're going to see how really superstitious you are. So, the Florida Panthers win the Eastern Conference, and they obviously touch the trophy.
I know where this is going. Yeah.
Do not care about any superstition. And you saw with Vegas kind of being, believe Mark Stone was quoted to say, "We're looking for a bigger cup. This isn't for us, whatever, blah, blah, blah." So in your position, you're captain of an NHL team. If you want to be Vegas or Florida, or you just want to make up your own team, or pretend you're the Sabres captain, are you touching the conference championship trophy, or are you just being Mark Stone, being a cool guy? And I will say this: Colorado last year touched and they won.
So this is a topic that I've thought about a lot, because I remember back during the back-to-back Penguins, Sidney Crosby touched the trophy, and that was a big deal. And they won back-to-back. And I never had a lot of thought into it, because I feel like as a hockey player, you have to understand that touching the trophy isn't going to magically make you play your worst in the next 7 games. I thought it was so funny when, I believe it was Barkov, took the trophy off the ice, into the locker room. I don't know if you normally watch it, but they touch it or they don't, and it sits on that table. But he brought it back to the locker room. They showed the shot of him carrying it off the ice and booking it to the locker room. And honestly, I just love that vibe. You're basically saying, we don't care about superstition. We're going to play with or without a silly little, we touched a piece of metal. So I never had an opinion on it before, but watching the vibes of Florida, I'd say I'd touch it just to make everyone mad and see what everyone's reaction is.
In the headlines. I'm not superstitious like that. I probably would touch it just because, I don't know. I always find it kind of silly that I know you're trying to win the cup, and Jimmy Butler's talked about how he doesn't care about the Eastern Conference trophy or anything, but I don't know. I do feel like your achievements like that should be celebrated, where you win your conference, especially in Florida's position being the 8th seed. kind of barely made the playoffs. I feel like you should at least take a second to appreciate that accomplishment. I don't know. I guess I mean here am I talking about being a high school athlete, like winning like sectionals and stuff, and I took the time to be like, oh, this is pretty cool. I mean, obviously there's more fish to fry, but at the same time, like I think I don't know. I feel like I would touch the trophy because like I literally like at that point you're probably like just duct tape and glue. I might as well all that bruising. I might as well like
I
touch
agree.
the thing I worked hard for.
Yeah, that's the inner Buffalo Bills fan in you, Dom, talking about how it's so great to have this trophy because the Bills do have 4 AFC Championship trophies, not a single ring to show for it. But you're right. It goes back to like, they lost those Super Bowls, but they went to 4 straight Super Bowls and they won 4 straight AFC Championships. And I mean, don't get me wrong. You ask those guys and they probably don't care. They'll probably tell you they wish that one of them was a ring and they would have given up the other 3 for 1 ring. But I feel like as an athlete, you got to hold yourself to a standard of winning the championship, but you also have to appreciate, at least in Florida, even in Miami sense too, right? You're 8 seeds, you're making history, and nobody picked you to go this far. So I think that for them, I think it's a really good appreciate what you've done and understand that you've done something that a lot of teams say they can't do. Like they can't go to a Stanley Cup, but more or less they can't do it as an 8 seed. So I think it's a thing that should be celebrated.
Yeah, I would agree. So, past your prime Hall of Fame, Michael, as we do this segment, it's basically a player that we believe is past their prime. I think it's pretty obvious. It is important to say that it is not the past your peak Hall of Fame. So the player could have peaked, and maybe you don't think he's going to be the player, like a 100-point player, but he could still be a solid player, and that's really not past your prime. But so my player for the past your prime Hall of Fame, this player that was just eliminated for the playoffs, Tyler Seguin.
Tyler Seguin. I was gonna say Jamie.
Now I'm gonna say it. He did have a 50-point season, and he was at about, I think he had 9 points in about 18 games, but he did not have a single point in this Vegas round. He's also making over just about, I think contract has to play a little bit. He's making for the next 4 years just a shade under $10 million for a dude that's barely a 50-point player. I don't think he's ever going to be that point per game player he was. And I think a 30 points drop off, especially because even previous years before that, he wasn't even that good. I think he's past his prime. I don't think he's ever going to get back. I don't think he's ever going to get back to his peak. And I think he's just going to continue to decline. I don't think he's going to like stay at this 50-point thing.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about championships, right? And I think it's kind of funny to look at Tyler Seguin's career. Won a cup his rookie year with Boston. And has he come close to sniffing it since? Not really. So I think that for a player that outside of his first couple of years, which, as we said, is his prime, but hasn't been that guy since, I'd say he's past his prime. And I feel like, I know we really shouldn't look into the organization as a whole when we decide these things. We should look more towards the individual. But you look at what Dallas has stocked up in the cupboards, right? They got Logan Stankoven. I believe they got Ty Dellandrea, Stankoven. I'm forgetting a couple of them.
Johnston.
Wyatt Johnston, that's his name. And then that's on. I didn't even mention Jake Ottinger or Jason Robinson. Like they have so much young talent, and they just saw so much success from that young talent that you don't need Tyler Seguin. I'm not saying you don't need, but you can transition away from your Jamie Benn in your Tyler Seguin, and you can think more about your Miro Heiskanen being the vet on that team, and maybe even Arupe Hintz if he comes back. But I mean, I would agree. I'd say he's past his prime, and I think that I got nothing else.
Yeah, I think especially because this series was really decided that Dallas really only had one line, the Hintz Robertson Felski line, and they really needed Tyler Seguin to step up, and he really just threw up on himself. So again, I think in the state of like if you looked at his stats, he's still a 50-point player, and maybe that's not completely past prime, but I think from what he was as an 80-point player just a couple of years ago to what he just did in the playoffs, I just think, especially with that hip that he had that surgery on, I think he's going to decline pretty soon to being pretty bad. And that contract is pretty brutal, and I don't think they can move it. So now it is time for, wait for it, Mike's trivia, but yeah, presented by Dom. So
We got a
here you
mic
go.
here. We got a mic here. We're fine.
We do have a mic here, but you're not answering the question. You're answering the question.
No,
Not
that's
asking the
true.
question.
That's true.
So here we go. Bill's question. So I talked a little bit on the show earlier that Josh is potentially the man 2024 covered. I didn't go too deep into that because it's still rumor based. We still got about, I think, June 8th, 10th is the date that they're going to probably officially announce it. So I'm still skeptical. So with that being said, what overall is Josh in Madden? In I believe it's Madden 23 right now. So
Okay. So the current Madden.
the current most Madden. What overall is,
All right.
is Joshua?
Time to put my bias aside. So he's not part of the 99 club. He's never been part of the 99 club in his entire career. I would have remembered that. What is he currently if I like boot up the game right now?
If you boot up the game right now, I think this shocked me.
Oh, okay. Well, then that kind of makes me want to not put it.
I probably shouldn't have said that because I completely just like
No,
gave you
because
the
I
math.
was gonna make it pretty close to 99, but not really it. Okay. I'll give you two answers. I'll give you the answer I was gonna say, but then I'm gonna give you the answer that I'm gonna go final on. I was gonna say 96, but when you say it's a little shocking, I'm gonna say they only had him at 90.
90 what?
90.
Oh, 90. No. Yeah, he's in the middle between those. He's 93.
93. Okay. Yeah.
Vaughn's 94 and Diggs is 97. I was gonna say I thought I don't know why, but I just assumed he was the highest rated Bill, and I was just gonna keep going back till Madden's to see which was the last year he wasn't the highest rated Bill, and I was like, he's not even the second highest rated Bill this year.
No, that's wow. I mean, I guess I really we all value quarterback as the most important position, but the Bills do have studs, and I guess I could see them putting Diggs. Von Miller, I mean, maybe because of his age, I wouldn't think they'd have him that high, but he's still very good, and he probably would be a 90s player, but I wouldn't think he'd be higher than Josh Allen.
I feel like I'm not gonna get super sidetracked, but I feel like that has to, if he's a 93 next year, I gotta wonder how low is that compared to the rest of the people that have been on the cover, because Mahomes, AB, Gronk, Richard Sherman, like those guys are probably all pretty high 90s.
Who was oh god, I'm forgetting his name. Was it Peyton Brown? What was the name of the guy? Peyton Hillis. But he played for the Browns, and he was okay. Because I'll always look back at that man.
He had strep throat that year.
Did he really?
The year that he won, the year that he was the man cover.
He got cursed. I remember that. But I just cursed. It's always funny to me as a Bills fan looking for like a Bills cover, and you see a Browns cover, and you always got to think to yourself, like, this is like prime, not prime, but like in the drought era for the Browns. Like, why do they have a cover? So yeah, no, I always think about that when I think of
it was bizarre. Yeah. All right. Sabres question. So Dom and MOOCH was a little bit in the news because he was getting his old equipment from the Czech Hall of Fame, that Hockey Hall of Fame that I believe is closing because of financial issues, which is kind of unfortunate. But what year did Dom and MOOCH have his best save percentage as a Sabre?
Okay, see, now I got to think about his extensive career as a Sabre. Okay, so I can't go late career because that would be Detroit. The Cup Finals against Dallas was 99, and I'd like to say that was his prime, at least in a playoff sense. He was carrying that team. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go a little bit before that, and I'm going to say the 1996 to 1997 season.
And you unfortunately would be incorrect. You should have stuck with your gut. He was 98-99.
Oh my goodness, the Cup year.
937 save percentage. His best as a pro either way, to be completely honest. So yes, the year that you did pick him, he did not win the Hart that year. He actually finished third. He won in 96, 97, 97, 98, and finished third in 98, 99 to Jaromir Jagr.
Okay.
And Alexis Yashin was second place.
So
Jagr had 127 points.
So at least I picked a year in which he did win the Hart. So that wouldn't have been a terrible guess. Right?
I don't know if he could have went wrong. His lowest save percentage, like from from his first year in Buffalo, was like a 920 until after that season.
Now where does that rank all time then? I'm curious, because if that doesn't win you the Hart,
937, I don't know.
Because that's got to be the number one in Sabres history, obviously. I'm sure he owns
like a minimum game perspective of like him being a starter, probably.
First seasons, he's got to have like the top maybe top 5. Maybe Miller has one of them. I'm curious now.
Probably Miller's Vezina year. He might have had like a 920, but 937 is pretty insane.
I don't think that can be matched in today's game, so I don't think that's getting broken or changed anytime soon. I don't think the Savior Levi might even touch that, but
no. And we're in the league that the average is like what 908 maybe. And
I want to say it's teetering. It's teetering around 9, and then I want to say goals against is teetering around 2. If I could be wrong.
No,
right?
2. It's like 3.
Is it 3? Maybe on
2 is like a lead.
It might be 2.5 then.
Yeah. All right.
Been a while.
So, who has the most points in a single postseason in Bandits history?
Oh man, John Tavares.
I should just specify this. This is a miscellaneous question. It is a Bandits question day.
I'm not even going to think about this one. I'm just going to say John Tavares. It can't be anyone else. No, really.
It is Dane Smith.
Dane Smith. Okay, I should have went a little bit more modern
this playoff actually has the most points in a. So you have to think. I didn't really think about this either, but the Bandit. I think the playoffs have expanded. So I don't think when Tavares was in his prime, the playoffs are really this long.
Okay.
And Dane Smith, I believe, has 41 points. And Eli McLaughlin, the best player for the Mammoths last year, had 42 points, which is the most across the entire league. So Dane Smith, if he collects 2 points on Friday, and I don't think anyone on Saturday, I don't think anyone's really close to him. He'll have the all-time mark for all in all. So
wow. Well, I hope he can bring a ring home with that because that'd be
I take him scoring 0 points in the Bandits win over him.
I'd take that every day of the week. Yeah,
but well. Thank you, Mooch, for hopping on and joining your debut.
Yeah, no, how'd I do?
I think pretty well. I still have the bump. Listen, how do you think I did as my first time producing? I still have the bumper saying Buffalo Sabres talk. And
we talked about the Sabres a little bit. No, I think you did great. Am I going to win the Calder? What do you think?
No, unfortunately not. Our statistician Ginge is currently the leading vote getter.
Oh, he predicted the tight end. Yeah, no, you're right.
From his performance in the draft, but
no, I get that. I'll take second place voting. I can handle that.
Listen, it is an honor to be behind Ginge. But without further ado, I am Dom Loss, and this was this episode of the Buffalonian Podcast. And Mooch, you have a call sign to end this?
Oh, a call sign to end this? Like a sign off.
You got like a Go Bills, or you want to do like a Go Bandits? You're going to be a.
Oh, okay. I'll do a little. It's Go Bandits.
Go Bills, baby.